Should be our biggest problem. Save me a seat right there. Yeah, yes, I'm sitting next to you.
I know you have to sit up there. There's
Need a bigger cabana. Why don't you give us some big money?
You know that city about that 2002 city?
Really?
First, it started 11:30 our time. So I had met that rabbi. It was on today on the news.
Yeah, sure.
And he was speaking about he lost his finger and everything. Very, very sad. But we'll bring light into the world.
That's it. Just trying to get everybody seated here.
No parking, so I had to park all the way down.
Trying to get everybody seated. Sitting there, bring that to Gabby. I don't know if I have a seat for you, but Andy, we need to seat up. We need to find something to get, right? Yeah. No, I did.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you all for coming and showing your support. The shooting in the Chabad of Poway may have been on the West Coast, 3,000 miles away, but yet, as we all know, it directly affects each one of us. It's still very close to home. This evening, we actually decided to call an evening of action, which will be focusing on 3 areas of Torah, of tefillah, prayer, and tzedakah, charity. There are 2 approaches of how to react when such a terrible act, such as what happened on Pesach, on Passover, in California, in the synagogue in Chabad of Poway. One of despair, giving up hope, feeling paralyzed by the fear, or one of strength, action, purpose, and meaning. It was after the terrible murder of 5 children and 1 teacher. This was in Kfar Chabad in 1956 in Israel, when the Rebbe wrote a letter to the community, quote, by your continued building will you be comforted. This is a message that is so relevant for us still, and we can all learn from this. A call to action, where we each individually build and grow and do another good deed. Only then will we and the Poway community be comforted. And even more, be stronger and more united than ever before. When Rabbi Goldstein spoke, Shortly after he came out of surgery, I'm sure all of you have seen the different videos and the coverage. After surgery, he had a message, and his message was very clear. Do not lose hope. Do not despair, but rather be strong and do something positive. This is the only way we're going to overcome this horrid darkness. I would like to call up Rabbi Reuben. He's the head Chabad rabbi of the Capital Region to share a few words. Rabbi Reuben is overseeing 8 Chabad houses locally and many more in the further areas. Rabbi Reuben.
We are very thankful to Rabbi Zalmi and Chani Simon, the elder Simons, for arranging this memorial or this call to action on such short notice, whether it's just 24 hours since we talked about it and they got the word out and organized this. What do we do? Where do we go? We have to realize, and I say this not to go to the extreme which Rabbi Zalmi alluded to, it's not a time of despair, it's not a time of losing hope. On the contrary, this is a time for strengthening ourselves. I look at the rabbi in Poway who was confronted the gunman and averted a much greater massacre that could have been, God forbid. And besides, as he described it, the miraculous jamming of the gun, we did lose a beautiful person, Lori Leah Bas Reuven. But we also have to realize that the rabbi, by taking action, by confronting it and sort of literally taking the bull by the horns, stopped a much greater tragedy and averted many more deaths and massacres that could have been. Certainly this comes after many attacks against all kinds of religions, whether it's Muslim, Christian, Sri Lanka, and all over the world, in New Zealand. We have to be sensitive to everyone's loss. This does not mean that we are in the darkness of a pogrom. I urge anybody who thinks so to really think of the pogroms where the government was actually involved directly or indirectly, and where the police and the law officers that were in those days and those times and those places either assisted or actually looked the other way. This is, we are speaking of the United States of America. We're speaking of an American society that is, by and large, very friendly and tolerant. This is something that is one of the main basic values of our country, which respects mutual respect for all religions. And it's unfortunate that the poison is there, and it's because of the spread of technology, it can reach everybody wherever they want, anybody who wants to pick that up and go with it. So at the same time, I think of that Rabbi Goldstein. I personally know him, I know his father, I know him, and he is a very warm, embracing person. And I think that even though he's missing a finger or two now, his embrace is stronger and tighter than ever. Just the way he speaks and conducts himself and the way the message that he conveys is one of love, like this was organized, a call to action, not to despair, not to lose hope, but to do what the Rebbe taught us, to emphasize the beauty and value of each and every mitzvah, every good and kindness that everybody does in their own way. We have, this is, I thank Rabbi Salmi Echani for doing this on behalf of Capital Chabad. We have representation from several Chabads, from Gilderland, we have from Colony and Loudonville, we have from Saratoga and Clifton Park, Troy, and all of us are going to do similar things in our own places to raise awareness, to light a candle in this darkness, and to make the world a better place, and not to give up hope. And this, like this Rabbi Goldstein, he was very resilient, and he had faced the thing on his body. He himself was injured, but he just wrapped himself in a talus, and he kept on telling everybody, Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel lives.
To take the microphone and bring the microphone here. Shows the microphone. Because she said this.
Der erste Maskone, was man da reisgenommen von der Jure, von der Pazilo, am Metapher schaffen, die alle Juris, wo sie sollen versichern, die Unione betochen, aber soll nicht können passieren, nach zweiten Mal. Und wie beterrt der Jodem, als sagt, als man sagt, nach Limut, und die beweist nicht, mit was sie verbunden, nennt Herzer den Limut, aber nicht keine sichere Sache, als wird es doch. Schade, dass sie verbunden mit der Linie, was gesehen als ein Teil von dem jüdischen Gut, was wie gesagt, früher, alle Jiden seinen Akema, Acher, Schlemmer. Ich sollte damals, dass viele der, was Liebe, Leben, woever. Ich sehe, die Jimas Kamali und das Sache nach Reishutter. Als nicht nur Leser, was nur was bei sich, wird vergrößern die Versicherungsmittel. Bis der Tag ist so erscheuert, wird vermeintlich von allen Jiden herum. Was jeder Teile, der lebt in einer anderen Welt, der lebt in einer anderen Medine. Weiß nicht, wenn was mir öffnet. Sagt immer, soll es wissen sein, dass in der Gehe Tier, dass in der Gehe Mir, dass in der Gehe dem jüdischen Volk. Lebst in was für eine Medine, du sollst nicht leben, was für ein Kino, das nicht bekommen. Was für eine Welt, du hast mit der Hand oder du hast Kiste. Was dein Leben nicht gewinnt, bis unter dem Juro, ist auch diese, darfst du ein Drittel tun und annehmen. Die Tachlis war Schorius in den Versicherungsmitteln. Also sein Abaisch im Recho, Abaisch mit Zezo, und wie Jecho Mato war Delom, was durch was hast du die Schmiede von den Menschen, von hinter der Jono, weil ich und Schemel Israel, in das Druf, verbindet mit den Menschen. Nicht nur Druf, was Rachmane Liedeborg. Du hast ein jüdischer Herz. Und als kommt in Kippur, geht in die Schule. Und als kommt in Kippur, die Passier, oder in Kippur, die Nuchome, oder am Jura, was Jid steht in der Sakone, weil gestern hat alle Späne, so lustig hat mit ihr was Nefesh, der Rebischter will, als Jid soll leben, Chaye, jemand normalen Leben. Was Bechaye, wird Mekayim sein, viele wie der Rebischter will. Und unter dem und mit so loschen Tapsa Rechibo, ist der Rebischter mit dem Mechabe und Hitzen mit Zeit Sayu Veyecho bis ad Elo. In der Alochas Tfilun, der Achilles Kassel, der Schmiere Shabbat, die leben in der Woche, Produkt von den Lebensmitteln. In das Agine, was in der Gehe, Fiete steht in Druck, jeder riecht das Sonne und das ist ein von den jungen Pitochen von Agiden, wo soll sich nicht gefunden und von was meine Tomate, soll sich nicht gefunden, worden Kohl, Israel, Arabi. Selber sehe ich das erzählt von Gate Kodesh. Ziviler ja, ziviler nicht. Es ist aber sehr geboren geworden, als Ben, Avraham, Yitzchak, Bianchi. Und Bas, Sore, Rivke, noch überlebt. Und das kommt keiner nicht weit, nach jedem hat mich gerne Kriege Kopf. Achus 91 gesagt, geboren geworden nach jedem, eine Geige, wenn das Woche ist Fall und bleibt er nach jedem, bei Eva Maser, und Eva Mabo, nach Seid Koladesh.
I'd like to call Rabbi Laber, Chabad of Southern Rensselaer County, Southern Rensselaer, to share words of tefillah, of prayer, with the chapter of Psalms 20 and 23.
Lam Natseyach Mizmer LeDavid. Ya'amcha Adonai b'yom tzara yisagev Hashem Elohei Yaakov. Yishlach Ezracha mikodesh u'mitzion yisadeka. Yizkor Kol mitvesach avei los choydash naselom. Yiten lecha chilvavacha v'chol atzascha yimalei. V'ranenu b'shuasecha uv'shem Eloheinu nitgael yimalei Adonai kol mishalesecha. Ata yadati ki Yeshia Adonai Mashiachai Yaneu mishmei kachay bigvudes yesha yeminai. Eile varecha ve'eile vasusim v'anachnu b'shem Adonai Eloheinu naskir. Hey Makaru v'nafolu v'anachnu kamnu v'nisaydad. Adonai Hoshea HaMelech Yaneinu v'yom Koreinu. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Roi Lo Yachsar. Inai stesha yabitzeni amimenuches inahaleni. Nafshi yeshevei v'yancheni b'maklei tzedek l'man shamoi. Gam ki elech megeit zamaves le'ida ra ki ata yamadi. Shiftecho mishantecho hema yinachamuni. Tarech lefanei shulchan neged zereroi Tishanto b'shem reishi kaisir devayom. Achtoy v'kasef yitifuni v'yimei chayai v'shavti b'veis Adonai la'erech yomim. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He causes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even when I walk in the valley of darkness, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You set a table before me in the presence of my adversaries. You anointed my head with oil, my cup overflowed. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord for length of days.
We'll now move on to the next part of tzedakah, of charity. If everyone saw on your chairs, there was coins. Soon there will be different pushkas, charity boxes that will be handed out, and you can put your coin, do a good deed by putting it in the charity box. These coins are going to be donated, a little contribution towards Chabad over there, but each and every one also is able to contribute more. Just now, we want to take the moment to actually do a good deed. I'd like to call upon Ms. Eileen Seitz to share a few words. Eileen has been involved in the community for many years in many different capacities. So, Eileen.
Often tragedies and disaster need tzedakah. And our Jewish community, alongside other communities, galvanized from all over the country and all over the world to support and rebuild or replace or replenish. We see the needs and we respond. I can imagine some of you saying or kvetching, oh, here's another appeal, but this one is different. We don't only give because there is a need. We don't only give because there is a hole to fill. We also give for ourselves. It is what Jews do. Tzedakah, or charity, is a natural Jewish reflex. Why is tzedakah the Jewish response in times of crisis? The Talmud has many expressions such as charity saves from death, and charity hastens the redemption, and the world rests on three pillars: Torah, service, and giving deeds. So when our world shakes a little, and when our world trembles, we strengthen our three pillars, and charity is one of those three pillars. We also give tzedakah because when hatred makes the world darker, we want to make it a little brighter. When violence tries to steal away our sense of community, we give even more in return. The New York Times cover page quote from Rabbi Goldstein had this powerful quote from Rabbi Goldstein, a poet. I do not know why God spared my life in my Poway synagogue. All I can do is make this borrowed time matter. This beautiful line is relevant to tzedakah as well. Some see the concept as charity, that we give as money and resources that we have on loan from God, on loan to us so that we can benefit others. So this appeal is different. There's a coin at each of your seats. The coin won't change anyone's bank account or balance the books at any temple, but it symbolizes our ongoing resolve to give and to continue to give, that we each help make our world a better place. And I'd like to have Bob Finkel come up. He's chairman. He's chairman of the Jewish Federation of Northeastern New York.
As chair of the Jewish Federation of Northeastern New York, I'm inspired by the outpouring and support of the Jewish community from everybody here today. I'd like to take this time to read a few excerpts from Mark Wolf and Jerry Silverman. They are the chairman and the CEO of the Jewish Federations of North America. We are once again in an alarming position of having to condemn another despicable act of hatred, anti-Semitism, and the vilification of others. 6 months to the day after the devastating massacre at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, its anniversary was marked by a heinous act on the synagogue in Poway, a suburb of San Diego, on Shabbat, the last day of Passover, when Jews come together for prayer, celebration, and remembrance through Yizkor. On this festival of freedom, we find ourselves sadly mourning the death of one, the injury of at least 3 others, and the collective pain of the Jewish people and their good neighbors everywhere. Our hearts go out to the victims, their families, and the loved ones, and we stand ready to assist in any way possible. We recently sat at our Seder tables asking the questions that define our freedom, remembering how fortunate we are to be free when we were once enslaved. By the tyranny of anti-Semitism and violent acts of hatred challenge our freedom. Once again, we say, Dayenu, enough. The scourge of anti-Semitism is insidious, poisoning a society from inside. It rears its ugly head in newspaper cartoons, and not only those from the usual suspects. This past week, a disgusting display of anti-Semitic tropes and an outright attack on the Jewish people appeared in the New York Times. The paper has characterized the running of this cartoon as an error of judgment. This is not about judgment. It is about a deep-set prejudice that must be excoriated and expunged, not sanitized. The line has been crossed too many times in our day, and it needs to be stopped. Dayenu. This week we commemorate Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, with trepidation. Fearing the past may be prelude, we do not act in unity and solidarity as a community. That means joining together as never before. It means putting aside our petty differences and arguments and standing together as a solid block against hatred and xenophobia. It is a sad commentary on our perilous situation when anti-Semitism must be the impetus for coming together. But we are called to this moment in history to act forever, be plagued by a cycle of violence and destruction. We must speak out for ourselves and for our neighbors. Hatred against others is hatred against us and vice versa. History has shown that the terrible path rarely stops at anti-Semitism. The entire world is poisoned by the fruit of this contemptible tree. We are in the time of the counting of the Omer, the period of 7 weeks from the second night of Passover until Shavuot, which commemorates our receiving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. It is a time to use our introspection to face outward, to embrace the principles of kindness and enlightenment in our daily actions. Let us use this time to come together and defeat the forces that threaten the freedom of all. Let us join with our fellow human beings who seek a world at peace and in harmony, where our differences excite us and challenges us to better ourselves. We must be the change we want to see in the world. Then Dayenu will truly be Dayenu. Thank you so much for coming out this evening.
Throughout Jewish history, anti-Semitism is nothing new to the Jewish people. It's been around for thousands of years. We said it in the Haggadah just a week ago. Every generation, there's someone else that wants to rise up and hurt the Jewish people. But there's something unique in this idea where it's not only anti-Semites against the Jewish people, it's the whole community has joined in, no matter if they're Gentile or Jewish, and have stood side by side with the Jewish community, different than most times in Jewish history. It's the government. We had Purim, the king Ahasuerus let Haman do whatever you want. We had the Cossacks where the Tsar said, do what you want with the Jews. We had the Nazis and the government said, do whatever you want with the Jews and we'll help you out. But there's something different in the United States and America, that it's not the anti-Semites against the Jews, it's just the people who hate against all humanity. And with that, we're very, very grateful to our government officials that have stood side by side and helped the Jewish community, whether they're politicians or that they're the police. And they have just given enough support as much as they can to the Jewish community. And we are grateful here in the Capital District specifically for being very good friends with all the government officials. With that, I'd like to call up Ann McCoy, who's the Albany County Executive, to say a few words.
So much goes through my mind right now thinking about what words do you choose? What do you say to a community? And, I think of Laura Oster, and I think of Rabbi Goldstein, what he said when he was talking about on one of the videos he was on. He talked about he couldn't look into the soul of a gentleman because he had sunglasses on. And maybe to a lot of people, you don't think that deeply into it, but being in the military, and you react, and that's what Oscar did. He reacted to the training he had in the military. And yet in that moment of what was going on in that synagogue, the rabbi tried to stop it, was trying to understand why he was doing it. That's what I was taking away. I was like arguing with myself, what was that message? In the midst of that, he's trying to figure out and look into his eyes to find out why he did it, or why he was doing this act. I think of the paramedic that was visiting from Israel that talked about what he's seen and saw. The family that came from Israel for a better life didn't think it would happen in this country. One of the things, as president of County Executives of America, I visit great places around this country. And when I go there, I always look and I try to see what type of museums they have. And I always go to the Holocaust museums from DC. When I was in El Paso, Texas, and with the military also, and I take people on, I don't want to say field trips, but an education to walk back in time. Because if you look at the foundation of any religion, and you think what has happened to the Jewish people since World War II, and as Rabbi said, go beyond that, anyone would probably abandon their faith. But yet this community is resilient. They build off the foundation that they have, and they continue to move forward. And you look at the synagogues, what's it mean? Your home, I always say your house is like your sanctuary. But your synagogue is more than just home and your sanctuary. It's where you go to learn about God. It's where you go to feel safe, to get educated, to lean on one another, to get away from the day-to-day grind and not worry about what's happening outside. And yet now you have to have that fear. So I do stand here with all the rabbis, not just here in Albany County, but across this Capital District, across the state, across this nation, that we have to be resilient. And we have to know that light will always overcome darkness. No matter how hard things are thrown at us in life, we need to continue to preach and go forward and educate. And I hate to say that, but we need to educate people. Why people feel this way. And we may never know the answer, but we need to continue to let people know that this can't be tolerated. It's an honor to stand here, but a sorrow moment, again, as county executives to stand here and have to come together as a community. And that was one of the reasons why I started to do Healing Moments throughout the county, to bring all faiths together, regardless of what you believe in, but to live. We can agree to disagree, but we have to continue to work together and move forward. That's what's great about this country. The last thing I'll say is what I took away from the rabbi when he said this Saturday, fill the synagogues. Come out. Everyone come out. Regardless of whatever denomination you are, come out this Saturday, go to a synagogue, and understand one another. Because that's the only way we're going to continue to move on. Thank you.
Together, we always have our good friend, Assembly Member Patricia Fahey, that's been a very good friend to the Jewish community and even personally and of our community, and I'd like to have her come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Rabbi. I had actually not planned to speak tonight. I was just coming here in support. So I appreciate the offer and I appreciate the kind words. And quite frankly, it is disturbing on so many levels. And I appreciate that the main theme tonight is to talk about healing and to talk about charity and to talk about moving forward, because that is so important, because we live in the most polarizing and troubling of times. I was at the Pillars at the JCC, the celebration yesterday for the JCC, and I went, wow, it won't be as much of a celebration this time, because it was just so disturbing, again, to see what is going on. And especially with our faith-based communities, to see the Sri Lanka, Christchurch in New Zealand, and to see these, yet again, another attack on a synagogue. I was reading an article, it's a very long, detailed article that was sent to me actually by a child psychiatrist coming out of an event on drug and opioid abuse. And the article was really about drug and opioid abuse and how, we're not tackling it, we're not quite on top of that. And at the end, it talked about going back to some of our real institutions in life, or some of our true institutions. It talked about the negative influence of social media and so many of the mental health issues that are facing us. And I still think many of the mental health issues are really at the crux of so much of this. But it did talk about the institutions that were talked about here tonight. And that is our families, and I mean that in the most broadest of terms, our faith, our sense of community. And that's exactly what we've heard tonight. And those are three themes that I think we need to really get back to and rediscover and broaden, because something is unraveling. We do live in highly, highly polarizing times. And I have to say, we had a long session today, and we had a rather contentious conference again, and this is among Democrats. And there's a lot of talk about the pulling apart of Democrats, let alone of our political institutions and the issues that are pulling us apart. So I see the tensions, I see the polarization on so many levels. And of course, in the extreme, when we see such horrific attacks, it shakes you to your foundation, and it brings all of us back to our history. And we worry, what are we repeating from the worst of our history? But I very much appreciate the positive notes here, because just as myself or the county executive, we have to move forward in trying to promote the policies that we think will be healing, the policies that we think will unite this our localities, our state, our country. We do have to just keep moving, as you have said, and remember that charity does begin in our hearts, and family begins here, and as does our faith and our sense of community. So I commend you. Tonight is an extraordinary outpouring, and all we can do is keep moving forward and trying to find that healing and trying to make the changes where appropriate. But it does seem at times like this that we have an awful lot of work to do. And we can't dismiss this as any one issue, as just anti-Semitism or mental health or social media or the polarization of society. It's no one issue, so no one issue will heal, but a continual coming together and reaching out and trying to find our commonality and building those bridges. That I commend you, Rabbi Simon, Rabbi Reuben, and so many others for constantly trying to do that. And I think I found the warmth in I left the JCC Pillars event yesterday to go to a Baptist church celebrating its 125th anniversary. And I'm Catholic, so I had just been at my own church, so it was, I had quite the, but I found it helpful because I too was extraordinarily rattled. And by the way, I heard about the need to heal in all three places and the importance of our faith-based communities, let alone the importance of community and family in general. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for your embracing of me. And I very much welcome the opportunities to continue to work together as we try to find the light here and try to find that healing and a way to move forward.
Before we finish with a message from Rabbi Goldstein, I would like to thank all those speakers who shared very powerful words. And in addition to that, for everyone coming out and showing their support. And finally, so that this is not just something where we get together and it ends here, we felt that how can we create this community get together, if you may, last. So there's a mitzvah card on everybody's seat, a card that describes what a mitzvah is, a good deed, with your name, and you can write a good deed. And I urge everyone to take upon themselves, it could be just one small thing, and what we're going to do, we'll collect them afterwards, and we're going to send them to the Chabad House in Poway, and so that the community there can be comforted and know that there are other people, number one, thinking about them, but in addition to that, actually adding and doing goodness and kindness, and in turn, that will impact not only our community and their community, but in the entire country and world.
Hold loud and clearly with my fingers bleeding profusely, say, Am Yisrael Chai. Nothing is going to take us down. Shalom, Rabbi Yisrael Goldstein, here from Chabad Poway. Just got out of surgery. It's not even 24 hours since the unthinkable, unfathomable terrorist attack occurred at Chabad Poway. It was yesterday, as we were finishing reading of the Torah for the last day of Passover, that I went out to the lobby and to go and prepare myself for reading the Haftarah that talks about the coming of Mashiach. It gives us our hope for a greater future. And we're freshening up, we come back to the lobby, and our dear friend, Mrs. Lori Kay, who has been with us since the early 90s, a woman full of chesed and kindness. Her mother recently died, and she came to me and asked me, what time is Yizkor? Because she wants to say Yizkor for her mother. And when I told her Yizkor's at 11:30, I turned around and to go to the banquet hall to wash my hands in preparation. Then I heard the very first shot. I instinctively turned around to try to see what's going on. And I locked eyes with this terrorist, this murderer, evil human being standing there. He was in position with the rifle. As he turned the rifle on me, and I lifted up my hands to protect my face, and he shot a couple rounds off, taking off my right finger and severely damaging my left finger, index finger, which we hope will survive this. I turned back around and I realized we have an active shooting going on. I saw a group of kids in the banquet hall. I ushered them together and I ran outside. My young granddaughter, Musia, 4.5 years old, is watching her Zaidi bleeding profusely. I didn't even realize that. I took a talus, wrapped it around my hand, and I was shouting as loud as I could to get all the kids away to a neighboring house. Got back into shul, got all the members to leave. Miraculously, his gun jammed, and there was a border patrol agent who recently discovered his medicine. Jonathan was there. As soon as he heard the commotion, he was able to get access to a gun, and he ran after, pursued the shooter, who got away in the car. He got off a few rounds on the car, but he got away. And fortunately, the police were able to apprehend him, the shooter, right afterwards. There is a tremendous amount of miracles that have occurred in this event, albeit the horrific loss of a dear Lori. For me, I went back into the lobby and I saw Lori laying on the floor. Her dear husband, Dr. Howard, who's a Kohen, who came to shul to do Abrichas Kohanim, fainted and is laying next to his passed away beautiful Lori. It was just a horrific sight to be seen. I went outside where the congregation has huddled together, and I went ahead and I got up on a chair and I told loud and clearly with my fingers bleeding profusely, saying, Am Yisrael Chai, nothing is going to take us down. This is what the Rebbe has taught us. This is what we live with. We are going to stand tall. We're going to stand proud of who we are. We're going to come through this. We're going to get through this. And the paramedics tried to get me down. And I said, I'm not leaving until everyone is accounted for. And once everyone was together, I went into the paramedics and I had a 4.5-hour surgery where the surgeons were very hard. They could not save my right index finger, but hopefully the left one will. So what we're going to do is, just like the Rebbe taught us, we are going to do something positive. I'm encouraging and I'm pleading every single Jew that sees this appeal, this weekend, go to your own respective synagogues, fill up the ballrooms, fill up the sanctuaries, let them see that nothing will take us down. Let them see that this is not going to deter us, it's not going to scare us. Jewish unity is what we need now more than ever. We're all in, and we all need to stand together, hold hands together, love each other, just like the Rebbe taught us, unconditional love. That a little bit of light pushes away darkness. A lot of light will certainly push away this horrific darkness. I don't know what the future holds for our congregation, for our preschool, for all of us. Everyone is scared, frightened, and shook it up. But one thing we do know, we're not alone. We have a family of shluchim. We have a family of Jewish communities. We're all in this together, and we're going to survive this, and we're going to grow from greatest strength to greatest strength. And let the words from Isaiah, from Yeshaya Navi, the prophet, tell us that indeed, we cannot be scared. We say it every Saturday night because we know the moments of Mashiach will arrive. Hashem should heal me. Hashem should heal all of us. Hashem should become a consolation to Howard K. Hershbach, the Yitzchak HaKohen, at the Chana Yehudis, that they just lost their dear wife and mother. Such a kind, beautiful person. Your neshama should rest in peace in Shemayim, and you should be reunited with the coming of Mashiach from the hair of Yevena speedily in our days. Amen.
Thank you again for coming. You can hand the cards when you're on your way out, and hopefully next time.
For now on.